when last we left off, you had coordinated with... Well, you got the dagger from Tremblay, and you had been coordinating with Wrangler to basically go back to the school and try to draw Leviathan out on a non-school day, basically, so you can, so you can prevent as many bystander casualties as possible.
Yeah.
Okay. And did you have something in mind for how you were going to draw him out?
Yeah. My plan is to try and step into the heart.
Okay.
Having done it before, I figure I can try and do that again. And then basically just pound my staff to call him out.
Okay.
And then when he gets close enough, pull him with me as I step back into the real world.
Okay. All right.
Whether he's in human form or serpent form, it's got to get done, right? So
That's true. Now, are you... Are you letting Professor Davis know about what you are doing?
yes,
Okay.
because I don't necessarily want to do the heart in the room. I kind of want to do it out in the lawn area, the quad area.
Okay.
Because then I can pull him out without wrecking it, with as little damage as possible.
You want to have a giant sea serpent on the interior of the history department?
Right.
Yeah, that's probably a good call. Okay. That seems like it'll work. Professor Davis does recommend Professor Davis actually says, I know exactly where we can do this. And she basically arranges to have one of the I imagine they've got a pretty decently sized athletic field.
Yeah.
They probably have a football stadium and a baseball park and all that stuff.
Yep.
So being as she is a professor and she is very active in basically the softball side of things, she basically reserves the baseball park for the day that you're going to be using it when there's not going to be anybody else around, and basically says let's do it there because big field, nobody else is going to be there. It won't be right in the middle of all the buildings. At most, some bleachers get smashed. No loss. So
yeah.
And she also makes sure to arrange for the removal of the thing from the school because that's requires some paperwork and yada yada yada.
Yep.
So okay. So then we will jump right to kind of an aerial view of this softball field. You've got the crate kind of sitting out right behind second plate, which is or second base,
mm-hmm.
which is more or less dead center of the field. Wrangler did a little bit of he objected a little bit to the venue just because it doesn't have the same cinematic dynamic layout to it. There aren't as many things for him to parkour off of and do crazy stunts and things like that. So he's not really he's not whining, but he's definitely taking the opportunity to point out I wish those lights were just a little bit further towards the center of the field so I could flip off those or whatever and but he does his best. He sets up a couple of cameras and
He's a little ridiculous, is what he is.
A little bit ridiculous, yeah, yeah. I mean, look, he's got to make his money somehow. Why not save the day while also paying his bills? So,
Right, right.
okay, so yeah, I was just taking a quick look at. Okay, we are ready to go, I think. I'm assuming you're in your suit. You have the knife. You have your staff.
Yep.
Any other preparations that you made before showing up?
Not really. I mean, I made sure Wrangler has the knife because me carrying it right now, I haven't really had a chance to wrap it and test it if I could hold it while it's still, while it's covered in fabric or not.
Okay.
I didn't want to chance that when I first, when I couldn't pick it up in the first place.
Right. Right.
So, yeah, I made sure he had it. I make sure he gets it wrapped and is all set, and then I'll suit up and have my staff and ready to go.
Okay. Great. You're there. The heart, like the first time you interacted with it, the heart seems to be trying to like compel you, like kind of pull you in to like into contact with it. So you get the feeling it's not going to be difficult to go into the heart. Leaving the heart may be slightly.
Yeah. Yeah, leaving might be a little harder, kind of like it was the first time.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, I'll just visualize, try to line up my heart with the feeling and the pulses I'm getting, and then step forward.
Okay. The closer you get to it, the more the pulses kind of like feel a little bit more insistent, maybe, until you get basically within touch distance, and you're able to like reach out and put a hand on it, and then you kind of get that slight disorientation feeling, and it froops you into like that same kind of crystalline chamber, or the tunnel, I guess, passageway that you were in previously.
Yeah.
It is very quiet, which you didn't notice the first time you were here, but it doesn't seem abnormal. It's just like it's one of those details that's standing out to you in the moment, where it's just abnormally quiet in this thing.
All right. Is the chalk X an arrow the chalk X or arrow I marked the first time there, or has that been removed?
That has been removed.
Okay. Because I did need it the first time, and it was very helpful, I brought along some chalk again just to be safe.
Okay.
I will remark where I just stepped in, just to be safe, and then I will extend my staff and hit the ground once. See if there's a response.
Okay. So your staff is like a collapsible like metal alloy staff, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So as you hit the ground, there's kind of that very clear, almost like crystalline ring sound, like if you flick the edge of a really well made wine glass. And it kind of echoes down the passageway in both directions. And there is a faint rumble in response from further away, and after you do that and you kind of listen for a second, you notice on the wall behind you, like basically right next to where you drew the X, a shape kind of starts to form, and then like a face sort of like almost grows out of the wall, And it's got like the beard and like the slight balding pattern and everything of Chancellor.
Chancellor.
It says, "Ah, so you've returned.
I have.
Come to find answers to your questions and the mysteries that stand before you?"
Yes, indeed. Though I feel I must remove Leviathan before that. For safety.
That may not be entirely necessary.
Really?
We could simply agree to meet with the Emperor.
And what good would that do me?
Well, at the very least, it would serve to stay Leviathan's hand. The Emperor surely will be interested in meeting you and would not want you to come to harm, after all.
Well, I suppose I could. That would work on my side anyway, if I can come and train and learn about Atlantean history. That would be, for me, the best choice.
The Emperor would be most pleased to teach you everything you need to know.
Well?
Give me a willpower action, please.
Ooh. Okay.
And don't forget, you can always do a Hail Mary to play the top card of the deck and just hope you get what you want, but you can only do that once per story. So...
Yeah, I'm going to use the 6. A nice middle card here with my will of 8. That gives me a 14.
Okay. Let's see, and you have the observation skill, yes?
Yes, I do.
This does not sound like... actually, sorry. Let me... Does not have that. Okay. This does not sound like Chancellor.
I was thinking that he didn't seem to like the Emperor last time we talked, so why he would recommend me speaking to him. But, all right. I will decline. No, I do not wish to study under the Emperor. That doesn't seem the best course of action for me.
A pity, but I suppose that might be expected coming from a woman. I will simply have to have Leviathan bring you to me by whatever means is necessary.
He can try.
The face just kind of goes inert, just becomes like part of the crystal and everything like that. However, it does freeze into an expression of it, and it's exceptionally well like sculpted. It looks like a human face, just in this kind of salt crystal type substance. It's kind of frozen into a face of barely restrained pain. And so it's still Chancellor's face.
Mm-hmm. I'll smack it off.
Okay.
So if it's extended at all, like if it's smooth and if it's like, just like from the forehead, like looks like a partial face sticking out, not
Mhm.
really, but if it's like got any kind of extension or neck pushing it forward, I'll just smack it off.
Yeah, it's 3-dimensional. Like it's coming out of the wall, maybe from like ears forward, basically.
Yeah, I'll smack it with the staff and
Okay.
see if it falls off or not.
It definitely cracks. Go ahead and redraw your card, by the way. Another 6 of agility. Okay. All right. So over the course of the conversation, that kind of rumbling has been getting louder and getting closer. So once you kind of break this face off of the wall of the heart, it's close enough now that it's right around the corner, and it slows a little bit, and you see the kind of serpentine snout kind of come around the curve of the passageway, sort of cautiously almost, and there's the tongue kind of flicks out, and then it finally comes around enough that you can make eye contact with it.
Shall we dance, Leviathan?
I don't think he can respond in this form. He cannot. So he is going to reply by parting its jaws and kind of issuing a... It's not necessarily a roar. It's like it's sort of a growl hiss combo.
Mm-hmm.
I'm trying to think, I think the Velociraptors in the Jurassic Park series make a similar sound. Is probably the closest approximation I can come up with. So
That weird bird-like chirping thing they do.
yeah, it's a little bit less high pitched, and it's got more of a like a rumble kind of growling aspect to it, but similar to that, yeah.
Okay.
And yeah, he's gonna lunge forward.
And I will pull him out with me.
Okay, so you will need to be in contact with him to do that.
Yep.
But I imagine you don't want him to actually you don't want him to actually bite you.
Correct.
So I'm going to require an agility action from you for dodging out of the way. So your acrobatics skill will play into this.
Okay. Play that. And that, which gives me a 19 with acrobatics involved.
All right. So go ahead and draw your card back. Actually, oh yeah, that's fine. That's fine. You can draw the card back now. I'm looking at the wrong sheet. That's the one I want. Okay. Ooh, that's gonna hurt. So, you go to dodge out of the way, and you manage to avoid his jaws, but he's still, the head still basically kind of darts past you, and basically bounces you off the wall of the passageway before you're able to kind of get a solid hand on him. I'm going to need a phasing action now to draw him out of the heart. You will also take 3 points of damage after your strength is subtracted. So I'll need you, after you do your card play for this, you'll have to subtract 3 points worth of damage.
Okay, so I play this.
Okay. Probably a good call.
Which drops that willpower on it.
Okay.
And so phasing 10, 18, 22.
22.
And I got the passenger stunt, so it should just
Okay. Yeah, you grab a hold of him and, you basically place a hand on him as he's like the length of his body is kind of still kind of rushing by. Seems like he's gonna try to like pass you completely and like make another circuit, because it's very tight confines in here for him to be fighting.
Yep.
So you do manage to like place a hand on him solidly, and you kind of step back through the wall, and you have this vague sensation of like you're trying to like basically wrap your arms around someone and like haul them through. Basically, like you're trying to haul somebody through a doorway, and there is quite a struggle. I would say a titanic struggle, at least by your comparison and by your experience.
Yeah.
And finally, it's kind of that feeling of like you're slowly like kind of like hauling him through the door. You take a step at a time and you brace and then you haul and then you brace and then you haul, despite him struggling and thrashing and trying to get out of your grip. And then you suddenly kind of fall onto the grass of the field, and Leviathan is like kind of looming over you. The length of his body is kind of like coiled around itself, not as if he's like coiled intentionally. It's almost like you picked like a string and then like dropped it on its end on the ground, and it just kind of like of tangled. Seems a little bit disoriented. Compiler joins the Union. So let me ask you this: Is Compiler even aware that there is a Union vote in process?
I think probably yes, because it would want to keep tabs on, like, if superheroism, if vigilantism is going to be more of a thing in this city, that's definitely something to watch out for. It's hard to stay secret when there's people with X-ray vision flying around.
Okay. Now, is Compiler compelled to join the Union sort of inherently?
That's the thing, right? I don't think it would be. It doesn't really see itself as a vigilante per se, so I don't know that it would, especially given that it's not even sure if it legally could, given its constructed status, let's say.
Okay. That is interesting that you bring up that point. Okay. So let's set the scene a little bit. Compiler is probably a few days out of having rescued Dr. Lee from Professor Calamitous, having interacted with a blockade officer by the name of Ark, and there's a little bit of media coverage about the whole thing. I mean, it's not like Compiler was acting completely covertly in the way that it kind of went about things. So, assuming that Compiler kind of keeps track of the media like coverage and stuff like that, even if it's like sort of like background awareness, you would have seen headlines or heard newscasts about and this is everyone's favorite reporter, Brock Kentman, that is kind of the predominant voice on this, talking about rampaging robots and some sort of murderous androids on the loose, and very speculative, very sort of like sensational. Basically talking about like having attacked and demolished an office building downtown. he says downtown. It really was nowhere near down. It's very much like outskirts of the city, but again, it's more sensational that way. Talking about how this, this corporate building that was sort of central to, revitalization efforts in that area was demolished by some unknown, strange cyborg. Like he uses those like different terms every time he refers to compiler: android, robot, cyborg, bionic man, that kind of stuff.
Mechanical monster.
Yeah, exactly. So that's the majority of what compiler has been hearing in the news. There are some more legitimate news outlets that are covering the whole thing. There is some more legitimate news outlets have been contacting Blockade Securities in an attempt to have an interview with ARC. The CEO of Blockade Securities has basically been like, we have no comments, yada yada yada. Like, they lawyer up, and they're very hush hush quiet about the whole thing. Dr. Lee is... So they do interview Dr. Lee, and she gives kind of a modified version of events. They basically ask why, what her involvement was, and she says that following the attack on HARC advertising, the HARC advertising headquarters in the city, that she was targeted by the creator of the robots that attacked the building and kidnapped for reasons she didn't fully understand, but that an independent artificial intelligence that came to her rescue, and she kind of leaves it at that. So, what's compiler's reaction to all this? Thoughts, impressions?
Well, I think first and foremost, it's unhappy that this got as big as it did, because it really thought that this was going to be quiet. It was going to be, I'm dealing with my own business. I'm going to get the doctor out of there, and then we never have to think about this again. And now everyone is talking about it. So,
unfortunately, fairly high profile when a building explodes. So,
yeah, that'll happen.
Stupid self-destruct mechanisms. Okay.
Generally, I think it is just kind of trying to lay low at the moment, though. As much as it does need to get in contact with Dr. Lee to deal with the whole Project Facelift thing, it doesn't want to, show up at her house and maybe draw this into the spotlight,
That's fair. I think that's perfectly legitimate. Okay. So then, after a couple of days, what's compiler doing during that time? Is the compiler working on reprogramming Butlotron, or what's the?
Yeah, I think compiler really, because it managed to capture that Stackatron before, it's been sort of learning how to interact. It's because to my understanding, it's not a sentient robot, right? It's more of a programmed tool. Is that accurate to say?
Yes, correct. It is. Even as a computer, its intelligence is relatively low. But as long as you're there to direct it and program it and kind of tell it what tool you need it to turn into to do whatever it is you're going to do, it's got a lot of capabilities, but its capacity for independent initiative and stuff like that is minimal.
Okay. Yeah. Honestly, I think compiler spends a full day or two on just naming the thing, so...
Okay. And it's fair. You can change the name if you want. I called it Butlotron because I wanted to play on the Stackatron thing, but I couldn't figure out what else to call it, so...
Absolutely. The name that I have come up with is Spot, like a cat.
Okay.
More specifically, Commander Data's cat. But it is an acronym for Swiftly Polymorphic Operational Terminal.
Love it. Okay.
Because after all, that is how compiler learned to name things.
Swiftly.
Calamitous operational machine for the placement of intelligence and life extension rig learned to name things.
Acronyms. It's all about the acronyms. You said it was swiftly polymorphic or polymorphic. What was the other?
Operational terminal.
Operational. I love that. Okay. AKA Spot. Okay. Perfect.
Yeah. Of course, compiler does have to go out every now and then, because as I recall, the more or less abandoned machine shed that it lives in doesn't actually have a power hookup, so it will have to recharge somewhere. But other than that, yeah, I think it's just learning how to be friends with, quote unquote, this new little robot friend.
Okay. All right. Well, a couple of days in, after you've gone to recharge back towards the main building, kind of late at night, and you get back to the shed, and there is a Spot has a small blinking light on its interface. Because Spot is basically your computer terminal, but it can also change into other tools, is my understanding.
I think that's probably accurate. I'm imagining it being something like a pet, but also a machine. I don't know. Yeah.
Wait, you've got a cat that is also its own keyboard, so you don't have to worry about your pet sleeping, sitting on your keyboard. That's a genius.
Oh yeah.
Okay.
That's efficiency, is what that is.
That is efficiency. You can be typing and petting your cat at the same time. I love it. Yeah, so there's a little blinking light.
I guess I'm not super sure how the playback on this works. Is it more mechanical interaction? Are we talking more voice commands?
It's probably a combination of both. The Stackatron is fairly advanced as far as the hardware and everything like that. It's just Professor Calamitous has learned at least something of a lesson from compiler and opted to make his future robotic minions not particularly sentient, or the programming is relatively straightforward on most of them. So yeah, there's probably voice activation and facial recognition and stuff like that. I mean, if you wanted to get super high tech, you're not. I was gonna say you could do pupillary response interface and stuff like that, which would be
tricky.
Yeah, it'd be difficult for you. But yeah, I mean, it's got all kinds of different bells and whistles on it. So.
Okay. Yeah, in that case, I think compiler's reaction is basically just to... Oh, hello. What have you got for me today, little friend?
There's a... I imagine that Spot is going to communicate in the most efficient method possible, which I have to imagine would be... do you you've got the computer link powered, do you interface directly with Spot via a Bluetooth or digital connection, or do you physically interface?
I think that makes sense to have that sort of remote wireless connection.
Okay.
Uplinks, it gets things done quick.
Yeah, I mean, basically, when you are in your superhero hideout, quote unquote, we'll give it a little bit more gravitas than abandoned equipment shed. When you're in your superhero hideout, you are able to essentially use Spot as sort of an extension of your consciousness in a way. So, like you said, it makes for very quick interaction and relaying of instructions and stuff like that. It makes things very fast, very efficient. And so, once you kind of query Spot, Spot will connect you to a video message, like a FaceTime message that's been recorded, essentially. And it is of she is a somewhat heavy-set woman, probably in her 40s or so. She looks very, very professional. Like, this is very obviously a business call. She's got kind of fair skin, slightly kind of graying, like dark black hair, and she's looking right at the camera, and she says, "This message is for the entity referring to itself as Compiler. Dr. Lee informed me that you were helpful in her recent situation, and I'm interested in extending some formalities that may be of interest to you. If you're interested, you can call me back." She provides a number. She says, "I'm Deirdre Fitzpatrick, and I represent Vigilantes Union Local 13. And then the message ends.
All right. Honestly, I think Compiler's gonna probably need a few minutes to process that. It has no idea how she found it, so that's alarming. But ultimately, yeah, I mean, it's absolutely gonna call back pretty quick, I think, because despite doing its best to stay more or less on the down low, it's also been living in a dirty shed for the past month, and it's not not the best accommodations.
It might be a robot, but it's got standards.
Yeah, I mean, it remembers being a human. Like, you spend 30 years sleeping in good beds, and then...
That's true. Although, luckily, you don't ever have to worry about that low back pain that Professor Calamitous always was complaining about.
That is certainly a relief.
Yeah, it's kind of nice. Okay. The
Modular parts are great.
that knee's starting to wear out. I'll just pop in a new one.
Exactly.
If it was only that easy. Okay, yeah, you call back. Are you doing a FaceTime, or are you just doing an audio call?
I think probably in whatever means it came through, right? So since she used FaceTime before, that seems to be the thing that she does, so I'm just trying to pick up on her social cue and do the same thing.
Okay, perfect. Like I said, it's fairly late. Like, it's probably 1 in the morning. The message probably came in sometime in the last hour that you were out charging. But when you call, she picks up, basically first ring, and the background is exactly the same. It looks like she's sitting in some sort of an office, like a corporate office. It's not super fancy. It's pretty basic. Kind of like shelf filing cabinet thing behind her, like one of those shelves that's built into the desk that kind of like the door flips up and then kind of like rolls back inside the unit. Very like IKEA style desk furniture. And she looks put together and everything like that. She doesn't look very different from when she made the call to you. She's got a cup of coffee in her hand, and she like taps whatever button she taps to like to answer the call, and then is kind of like leaning back with the cup of coffee in her hand, and she says, "Fitzpatrick."
Good morning. I am the Calamitous Operational Machine for the placement of Intelligence and Life Extension Rig, commonly known as Compiler. I understand you have words for me.
I do. Seems you have a number of words yourself. I'm very glad you shortened that into something a little bit more conducive to conversation.
My previous self may be many things, but he is at least sufficient at wordplay.
Well, that's It's good to know that that falls on your list of qualifications, I suppose. So, brass tacks. I imagine you aren't one for much small talk.
I wouldn't know how.
Well, I take that as a relief. So, the situation that we find ourselves in, you are an artificial entity, and as such, you currently don't have any legal rights or protections under the United States Constitution or laws in the state of Oregon, and most states in the U.S., as the case may be.
Fascinating. Most states? I shall have to research that later.
Well, California hosts Silicon Valley and things like that, so they've got a little bit more of a leg up on things like that. But that doesn't really help you unless you're planning on relocating. And I assure you the cost of living there, well, that shed you're living in would probably cost you a pretty penny in California. So, anyways.
I see.
The campus seems to have worked for you so far, but you're not exactly... Well, you're not exactly obfuscated there. There have been a number of sightings by the students of you on the campus and around the facilities. It wasn't difficult to track you down.
I admit I do my best, but I am not built to be subtle.
Well, that's not exactly a bad thing. Subtle is good in the right circumstances. But I will tell you that Blockade Securities seems to have a bit of a bee in their bonnet regarding your recent activities. They're making some waves, with the implication being that they want you to be apprehended and turned over to them for study to determine what trade secrets you may have pulled from their officer. Which is preposterous, obviously, but...
I see. Then should a meeting be arranged that I can explain this?
I wouldn't recommend it. As I said, there are limited legal protections that would prevent them from simply walking away with you. You don't have a legal owner in the traditional sense, someone who could file a theft report or bring a grievance, and any civil rights related questions would take years to resolve via the court system. So, as an option, as an offer of protection to you, were you to sign on with the Vigilantes Union chapter that is forming, that would offer you certain legal safeguards. Not to mention an upgrade in facilities. Unless you like where you're at.
It is certainly subpar, but also it is a strange situation. Though I remember a much better lab, I've never actually worked in one, so... These are the complications of being built fully formed. You say sign on to the Union. Is that even a viable option? If, as you say, I am not a legal entity with rights, could I be considered to sign something?
Well, yes. There are precedents for these kinds of contracts with the Union chapters across the country. Extraterrestrial life forms, other artificial life forms, although slightly different circumstances. We have lawyers on retainer that can draft up an agreement that would protect your ability to make decisions for yourself, and your signature and your participation would be honored.
See. I am interested in the sound of it. However, I cannot give you a final approval because, well, bluntly, I am full of memories of being incredibly paranoid, so I will need a lot more information before I can finalize that. But I am interested.
I can have a draft of the contract sent over to you. Obviously, some details will need to be tweaked, but at the very least, you can get a look at it from the get-go. And I will say that we probably want this to be resolved within 24 hours. It's not an offer you probably want to pass up, but it's your decision, ultimately. Sort of the nature of the whole monster is you making the decision.
I appreciate your understanding and your willingness to let me make such a decision, as it were. Yes, I would very much appreciate a primary draft.
I'll find a copy of a similar contract. Make sure that doesn't have any identifying information, and I'll send it over probably within the hour.
Understood. Never mind. It is not relevant. Thank
All
you
right.
for reaching out, I suppose.
Oh, it wasn't my choice, quite frankly. I owe Dr. Lee a favor. She was concerned about the social implications of letting you run around on your own.
I do not enjoy the sound of that sentence.
Which part?
The implications of letting me run around on my own, as though I need oversight, a babysitter?
Don't you?
In what capacity
Well,
have I indicated that I needed?
let's be frank. Your rescue of Dr. Lee was... let's say a stroke of luck more than anything, and wouldn't have been necessary if you hadn't been responsible for her being apprehended in the first place, is my understanding of the sequence of events. So you clearly aren't versed in these sorts of situations. And even the best of circumstances, I'm not one to put a lot of faith in extra-human individuals. Whether they be terrestrial or not, biological or not, it doesn't really matter.
I see.
I suppose it's only fair that I tell you up front. She takes a sip of coffee and says, I'm not a fan of superheroes and vigilantes. I don't do this job because I have some idolization or hero worship. Someone's got to keep you people, well, you individuals, in check. History seems to state that the best way to do that is by cooperating with your antics rather than trying to heavily regulate it. So this is the system in place, and I'm fine with playing by these rules. That doesn't mean I like it. It doesn't mean I like you.
I see. Well, I appreciate your candor, and I will cease building my death beam in the meantime. Have a wonderful morning.
She looks unimpressed with the with your parting line, but she
Simply a joke, but who knows?
she cuts the connection.
That's, I don't think compiler really knows how to show it, because it is so new and also so old and also so used to being the only one around who it can trust. But, like, superheroism is not really a thing it considered, so it's an interesting avenue, but oh, maybe this is a line it didn't want to walk.
Awkward position to be in for sure. Spot, sort of in that, via that connection, that digital connection says, I believe I sensed hostility.
That seems quite accurate, yes.
It kind of processes that and, then, like, stores it away somewhere. It's clearly trying to, like, it's trying to follow some of compiler's lead in getting a better understanding of, like, social interactions and things like that. It's not, its capacity is pretty limited, so it's not going to be super successful, but it's clearly trying.
That's very sweet. I love it. My previous self would not react well to pressure like this. I suspect he would... Well, being pushed into a corner is all the more reason to build a new giant kilotron or freeze ray or something of the like, but I would really prefer not to react like he would, so I suppose my options are to either go along with this or disappear. It's less than ideal.
You just get, like, the like, spinning circle kind of, not quite sure how to respond to that response from Spot.
Okay.
You do within probably a quarter of an hour. You do get a digital message from. I don't know if it's directly like an email or not. I don't know if compiler has an email address, but yeah, a message comes through on Spot's terminal, and it's a Word document from Deirdre, and it's clearly like a legal contract. It's very long. There's a lot of components and sections and subsections and paragraphs and stipulations and such in there, but it's it's comprehensive.
All right. Well, I suppose my course of action then would be to try and go through the whole thing and make sure the terms are not miserable for me. So
Okay.
there's that high-powered fast-action RPG contract reading session.
It's a montage. You don't have... Yeah, okay. So this is going to be an intellect action. Normally you would make use of the law skill here, but it doesn't seem that you have that. So, let's see. Yeah, okay, that's what I thought. So yeah, you have a little bit of time that you can put into this, but an intellect action is going to be critical. Let me know if there's anything you want to do to increase your chances of success, or
That's a good question. Like, my immediate thought would be to maybe try to justify hyperlinguistics as a way to parse legalese, since it's such a specific way of talking, but I don't think that increases my odds, since it's lower than intellect.
I'll tell you what. You know what? I'll tell you what. I like that, so I'm going to reward that idea. I will allow you to use one of your cards that is equal to or lower than your hyperlinguistics as an edge card, meaning you can play the card and then play a card for your actual action.
Okay.
So it's not quite the same as getting like a boost for playing an intellect card, but being as you've got a 4 in there, you basically you can play that 4 and your 6 on top of your intellect to get your score. Or you can do a Hail Mary, you can play off the top of the deck. So
I love the sound of doing the 4 and the 6. That sounds like what this is made for.
Okay, perfect. So that's going to give you a 10 plus your 10 intellect.
Your strength cards. Compiler doesn't understand this, but it's just going to brute force its way through.
Exactly. And you know what? You've got linguistics as a skill, so I'll give you a partial bonus for that. So that's going to be a 20, essentially a 22. I don't know why I put this book back when I was using it to reference something, and then I got distracted halfway through. Okay, yeah. It does indeed take you a while because there's a lot of kind of cross-referencing, like, okay, this phrase means something very specific in the legal system, and kind of like cross-referencing that with like legal definitions and stuff like that. And I doubt you have access to any like legal databases and stuff like that. So it's still relatively surface level, like internet information, but it's sufficient for you to determine that there's you get the feeling that there should be a provision in there for like medical insurance coverage that has been noticeably removed from your version of the contract. There's a provision about like providing costuming assistance and stuff like that, like, you know, kind of equipment procurement that has been mostly removed, slightly tweaked. The big difference, or the big important thing, is that you know, they indicate that they will provide you with, like, at the very least, basic facilities for any sort of scientific activity, like research, experimentation, design and development of new equipment, things like that. Also specifies that you will be considered an what's the way to reference, the best way to put this? You will be considered a ward of the Union for the purposes of making legal decisions and things like that related to personhood and like bodily autonomy, etc., etc. There are some additional like subsections in there talking about how like your input, your desires, your wishes will be given precedence via the legal system, but there's also some stuff in there that kind of seems like they might be able to wiggle out of that if you were to be acting in a way that they could justify as being of concern, quote unquote. It's you've determined that it is not explicitly designed to basically be like, well, we own you now and that's just the way it is. But if you were to like if your intelligence, if your capacity to make your own decisions and everything like that was truly compromised, then ownership of your physical body would go to the Union for the purposes of whatever legal and financial, you know, recovery might be involved. It's definitely one of those things where it's like, you know, shady terms of services, where it's like, I mean, generally, yeah, it's probably fine because I'm just going to be using, you know, whatever social media platform for silly social media stuff. But there's some stuff in there that, like, technically they could turn around and be like, well, we now own this content because you posted it on our platform, type of thing.
Right. Okay. problem with being an outcast that doesn't have a lawyer is not having a lawyer. Hmm.
Now, I will say, Dr. Lee did say that she works in kind of like robotics and artificial intelligence, and so this is a topic that is kind of near and dear to her heart because she was working on similar stuff for the facelift project. So,
Okay. That makes a lot of sense, yeah. In that case, I think compiler is going to... I guess it would have an email address, yes, but I don't think it would be something intelligent, right? Because it doesn't have that sort of creative spark yet, so it's going to be something very like a series of random letters at numbers at whatever secure email.
okay.
And it is going to attempt to contact Dr. Lee. It'll send that copy of the contract and explain its concerns with this whole process and ask if she has suggestion, because it does think that this is maybe the better option, but given the outright dislike expressed by the representative already, the whole "we own you if you do something wrong" thing is a little concerning.
Do you summarize all that in the email?
Yeah, just marking out
Okay.
points like section by section of what its concerns are, if that makes sense.
Okay.
And an apology at the end, like, very sorry for bothering you. However, I know literally no one else who is human.
Okay. It's obviously that's fairly early, so it takes a bit to get a response, but
Naturally.
the response that you do get is kind of in summary. Dr. Lee kind of starts off saying, I'm sorry about Deirdre. She has some pretty strong opinions about vigilantes and such. She has a bit of a history. She lost someone important to her because of some, in quotations, heroes that decided they were above the system. And she doesn't really expand on that any further. And then kind of goes to say, like, she kind of goes and like does a basic breakdown of like her assessment of various clauses in the like the really big ticket things in the contract. Kind of saying like, this is fairly standard legalese. It's fine. This is the kind of thing that any like new technology advancement would probably be under these provisions. And then towards at the end, she kind of tackles the ownership issue, and she says I would certainly be concerned about these portions of the contract as well. I wouldn't sign a technology that I had designed and had given awareness over into these particular terms. As an alternative, I would be happy to suggest an amendment to the contract indicating that ownership would revert to me in the case that something catastrophic were to occur. Sort of as a be your legal advocate, sort of like power of attorney, capacity. She says, I realize that's not really a perfect solution because it's just transferring the issue from one group or one entity to another, but I assure you I have a much more vested interest in ensuring the autonomy of artificial intelligence that the Union itself does not. And she kind of she says take it under consideration and contact me if and when you need anything else. And she kind of signs off that way.
Fascinating. Okay. Okay. Now I feel like Professor Calamitous' response to this sort of thing would generally be to, I don't know, build some sort of giant ink cannon and write over every contract in the city. But
I will make every contract incapable of being read, invalidate every legal agreement that's been made. Marriage is annulled. Business is dissolved.
But for the moment, I suppose that's probably not the best thing to do, because that's just going to cause more problems, because then they're going to be coming down on my head, and I think Compiler is really dubious about this. It's not happy, but it is willing to go along with that for the moment, to sort of try and rewrite it to incorporate Dr. Lee's suggestions.
Okay.
If for no other reason than they could just come and grab it if they wanted right now, so.
It's worth noting that, actually, I'm going to say that Spot, on its own, Spot does not, have a lot of initiative or problem solving. But when kind of networked with Compiler, probably is able to pick up on some of Compiler's running those what if scenarios, kind of computing out the different possible outcomes and whatnot. And from that, Spot is able to kind of take and run with the any concerns regarding Dr. Lee, and comes back with a slew of different video interviews and articles and research papers and opinion pieces and stuff like that Dr. Lee has either authored or been involved in, talking about the importance of establishing the legal protections and rights and legal sort of framework for constructed artificial sentience to be given whatever degree of personhood is possible. So she very much seems like an advocate, kind of a champion for that sort of thing, in advance of AI becoming very prominent and sort of just a ubiquitous thing. Worth mentioning.
Reassuring. Okay. Yeah, it's... As much as I think Compiler is still hesitant about this whole thing, it recognizes that it doesn't have a lot of options here. And so, yes, I think it is going to take the risk and trust Dr. Lee, though that is honestly pretty difficult. So, this is a for now thing, I think. It's not going to be content to let this lie, but it'll work for now.
Absolutely. This is setting the stage for the high tension legal drama story arc that will come through down the road. So yeah. Okay.
Yeah. I think with those suggested modifications, it's gonna get back in contact with Miss Fitzpatrick and send through the modified version and suggest that it would be willing to sign on with this.
Okay.
And it's being completely upfront about that because, again, no subtlety.
That's totally fair. Deirdre doesn't seem particularly bothered by the lack of subtlety or anything. She kind of returns it in kind with a, I'll get this to the legal team. I'll have them make the appropriate modifications. They'll be in touch with Dr. Lee. You'll have the DocuSign login portal information by the end of the day today. And that's kind of it. No hello, no goodbye, nothing like that. Just very boop, 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 factual, kind of bullet point, this is what's going to happen, this is what we need you to do, and kind of ends it that way. So,
All right.
So yeah, by the end of the day, compiler provided there are no sudden changes of heart, changes of fusion engine. What power core does compiler have? I know you have to recharge, but
we haven't really gone over, right? It's definitely. I think at one point we had talked about the possibility of having a built-in reactor, but I thought the charging was more interesting. So other than that, I don't think we have any kind of details.
Okay, that's fair. Regardless, unless there are any changes of opinion on the matter, by the end of the day today, compiler is signed on, contracted to be a full member of the union, provided the vote passes in a couple of days. So yeah.
I mean, as long as there's no CAPTCHA, I have to wander around the school looking for some. Excuse me, could you solve this for me, please?
I can't make out whatever digits or characters are in this grayed out field. I don't know. It's very strange. Yeah.
Which of these images contains a car? I do.
Well, I mean, this is a tank. Technically, a tank is a motorized vehicle. Therefore, this must be considered an automobile as well. All right. Yeah, I think that kind of covers it. But I am going to need you to give me three points worth of cards for the damage you took, and then you can draw one card back for the card you played. Okay. And then, so Wrangler is going to get. He's got how many? He's going to get 2 cards. I'm going to set these cards over here for Wrangler. Well, that could be better. And I think we're going to just move into what happens next. So, armed forces. I think it makes sense that the military would respond to this. Okay, I'm going to set up a timer here.
Lovely. Wrangler's broadcasting, so what happens? The National Guard shows up.
It won't be the National Guard. It'll actually be blockade. So
that's worse.
It is worse. They haven't exactly been the most friendly towards the vigilantes in the city so far. Okay, so what is it that you are going to do on your turn?
I am going to whack him.
Okay.
I really not much more I can do other than, get Wrangler to start stabbing him with the dang knife.
Fair enough. Wrangler is indeed going to try to, lunge at Leviathan, but in typical Wrangler fashion, he is going to be kind of doing he's going to kind of sprint in, and he does a tuck and roll, and tries to do a cartwheel type thing. He's trying to make it as cinematic as he can on this otherwise flat, featureless field. So that is what he is going to do. Leviathan, for his part, is going to focus on you, and he is going to try and... Well, he's probably learned not to try and wrap you up in his coils. So instead, he's just going to basically try to flick his tail and hit you with the end of his tail. Figures something quick and decisive is better than trying to subdue you. So yeah, that's the plan. I'm going to need an agility action from you for the dodge, and an action from you for hitting him, which is going to be a strength action. You can decide which card you want to play for which, but you're not going to redraw either card after you play it until the end of the round.
Yeah. I'll play this one for the hit.
Okay.
That with martial arts weapons and my strength makes it a 15. Don't know if it does much. He's pretty dang tough.
Okay. We will resolve that at the end. Go ahead and give me an agility action now for your avoision.
So that to dodge. With that.
That's looking pretty good.
And that.
Okay.
So acrobat, dodging out of the way, agility plus 19, 23 in acrobatics or martial arts, whichever one works, whichever one applies, or both might work. That's 24.
Okay. All right. Yeah, you do indeed manage to you manage to get out of the way. It's a very narrow thing though. Like you kind of do a little side roll and kind of spring to your feet and continue moving. And that extra little bit of movement at the end is kind of like what prevents his tail from just smashing you flat. You kind of take that opportunity to swing your staff at him, and again, it kind of bounces off his scales. Seems to be. It's a very solid hit, but considering his size and everything like that, it's there's not much that's going to do against him unless you get a really solid hit like on his snout or something like that.
Yeah, that's my ultimate goal, is to get close to the face and start beating at his eyes and mouth as much as possible.
Gotcha. Okay. So Wrangler is going to be focused more on being flashy for the first round. So I'm going to play the cards for that. That's going to give him a 6 and a 5. Or sorry, 6 and a 5 with that, so 11. Okay, yeah, he does his little kind of tumbling floor routine type of thing towards the big monster, and kind of puts himself in position to attack next round. But he doesn't seem to have a great sense of urgency right now. He clearly wants to draw this out a little bit for the sake of the views.
Faster is better.
All right, so that'll be that round. Go ahead and draw your cards back. So you get 2 cards back.
1, 2.
Those are not bad cards to get right now.
No, they aren't. I like those.
Oh no. Okay, well that's going to be unfortunate. And this goes down by 1. Okay, so at this point, is Leviathan trying to scare you off? No. Okay, so what are you going to do this round? What's your plan this time around? Are you still going to continue kind of doing distracting tactics, or?
I'm trying to get to his face to start hitting him.
Okay.
If I can hit him, that means he'll be focused on me when Wrangler finally stabs him.
Okay. Are you going to? So he is. He's going to try and attack you because Wrangler hasn't done anything to him yet.
Right.
He is going to bite at you this time. So I will need an agility or phasing, because you can use phasing to defend as well.
Yep.
And then if you want to try to hit him in the face because he's trying to bite at you, then that would be a strength action. So your cards just happen to play in really well to this particular round.
I think what I want to do really is, if he's biting at me,
Mm-hmm.
hit him in the back of the throat. I have partial phasing.
Okay. All right.
If I can phase partially enough and smack him in the side of his throat with the staff, and then get out of there would be really just kind of the best all around.
Okay. So I drew the narrator card for the turn. This is a double-edged sword. An 8 is bad for you because that's really good. That's good for Leviathan, but the positive aura is good for you because it means you get to draw a card back.
Yep. So I draw that now or at the end?
You draw that at the beginning of the round.
Beginning of the round. Okay.
Yep. Now I am going to need. I was going to say I need an action to determine, like a willpower action, to determine whether or not you're able to get your powers to cooperate with you in the very finessed way that you want them to cooperate. But I'm actually gonna say that the event here is never say die. I think that's gonna play in your favor. So I'm gonna say that they're gonna work today, or in this moment.
Well, that's very good and helpful.
I still do need an agility action for the phasing, though.
Yep. Phasing. So 16 on the phasing.
Ooh, okay. That's probably not as good as you were hoping to get.
No.
All right. Go ahead and give me the action for, smacking him, basically on the soft palate, as hard as you can. Oh, those ones. What is going on with the ones?
Both times. But that is a 16 with the staff.
Okay, so, his body armor isn't going to help him there. All right, yeah, so I'm going to say that you managed to avoid the brunt of the damage, but you don't manage to completely avoid it as, he chomps down on you, and you're still partially solid. Mm-hmm. So you got a 16, I think it was?
Yeah, it came out as a 16 on my phasing.
Okay. And it was also a 16 for your staff? Okay.
Yeah.
Weird.
Those ones, they're doing their thing, apparently.
Yeah, they really are being mean. Okay, so then you... Oops, wrong one. So let's see. Okay, so you're going to take 7 points of damage after your strength and your phasing are subtracted from the action. So go ahead and draw your 2 cards back for the play that you did this turn, and then discard 7 points worth of cards.
Okay. Well, that's rough. If I get rid of this, if I do this one, it's a little extra, but I keep 2 cards.
It is, yeah. I think that's probably a good decision.
Yeah.
All right, for his part, Wrangler is going to he's gonna dart in with the knife and kind of try to cut at him. He doesn't have knives, so he's not going to do a great job with it, but he's going to do it nonetheless. So that's is 7 plus 5 is 12, and then oops, sorry, I don't know why I'm discarding your card. I'm supposed to be discarding his cards. Yeah, he swings in with the knife, and he draws a little bit of blood with it, even through the scales. But it's not it's not significant attack. It does seem to Leviathan's body, like kind of the whole thing, kind of like jerks and twitches under the blade of the knife, and it's definitely going to call his attention to Wrangler. But you are still currently held in the snake's mouth, which is, probably going to be problematic. Yep. So yeah, that is where we will go into the next round.
All right.
Drawing the narrator card. Okay, and then cards for. Wow, he keeps getting Doom cards. Luckily, they don't play into you. Like, they don't play against you because it's an NPC using them. But he's struggling to really get a good foothold here. The narrator card is neutral, so you don't draw a card back into your hand. Nope. So yeah, I think Leviathan is going to try and grab Wrangler in his coils because he's got you neutralized as he thinks about it. So yeah, what are you going to do?
I am going to pop the same motion to hit him in the soft palate again, just hit him in the mouth, and then phase out the bottom of his mouth.
Okay. All right. Give me... Let's see. Now, I will say, one thing that you could do is... Wrangler is going to... he's going to focus on trying to get out of the way of this, actually. Because, again, he wants to delay this a little bit. He wants to look flashy by dodging this giant sea monster. So one thing that you could do is you can use your passenger's stunt defensively if you want to dephase Leviathan so he can't... So if he did... Even if he did hit Wrangler, he would just pass right through him. Just putting it out there.
That's a good idea, actually.
You probably would want that to be like your... That would still be your active action for the round rather than hitting him with the staff. Yeah. Just pointing that out, but just saying that that's an option.
That's a good option. I kind of like that option.
Okay.
Let's do that.
All right. So in that case, go ahead and give me... I'm going to go ahead and draw that for... Okay. I'm going to draw that for Leviathan for reasons, and go ahead and give me that agility action, keeping in mind that it is possible to do a push here, where basically you play an extra card, and then you play your actual card, which you would get the boost benefit off of if appropriate. Just reminding you of that mechanic. And Wrangler is, again, he's going to focus on just kind of flamboyantly, kind of flashily dodging and rolling out of the way.
Let's do that push. That'll be really helpful.
Okay.
So that gives me 9, and I draw in a 6. That's 15. Plus my phasing of 10, that's 26.
Okay. Okay. 26 and... God. 21. Okay. Yeah, Oh, let me play for... Wrangler real quick. It's going to be... Okay. Yeah, so it's actually a good thing that you did that, because otherwise Leviathan would have smacked Wrangler pretty solidly. Wrangler does manage to, obviously, because Leviathan is no longer solid, Wrangler does kind of dodge out of the way, and from probably a camera's perspective, it's going to look like he just like narrowly avoided it. You might get some people who go like cut it down to the frame by frame, and they're gonna be like, "Oh, this is clearly CGI. Look, he clipped right through it," or something like that. But at least in the moment on the surface, it looks like Wrangler, is very heroically avoiding the attack. So that's gonna take care of that. That's gonna do this.
Get one card back.
Yeah, you'll get one card back. So here's the thing with the animal form power. And a lot of other kind of shape-changing powers. Generally, you only maintain the form via concentration. And the card I just drew here, because I've got my own deck that I'm using to kind of like make decisions and kind of drive the narrative a little bit. The one that I just drew is sudden transformation. Yeah. So.
Oh, that one again. Okay.
Yeah. So really, the only transformation that makes sense here. Let's see. Yeah, okay. So, this is a concentration thing. So, I think that him having been warped out of the heart, like basically across dimensions, and then like, I'm trying to think of the right word without it having like a super negative connotation. Unwillingly been phased out of the physical dimension for a moment. I think that is going to force him back into his normal human form for the next round.
Okay.
So yeah, I think we're gonna go that route.
How does that relate to me being stuck in his mouth?
You basically essentially like fall out of his mouth as he's going through the transformation.
Okay.
And because you're both phased, like, you just kind of pass through each other. And so you both end up in human form, like kind of like having like fallen to the ground.
Face to face, we're lying on the ground. Yeah.
Yeah. Maybe a couple meters apart, but yeah. So yeah, we're going to go with that. And then I'm going to do another card, and we're going to do that. Okay.
Positive aura, I draw a card.
That is true, yes. Ooh, okay. Couple of strength cards. Okay. And we've got 2 rounds left on this timer. All right, so Leviathan is going to try and activate his fear ability. He's basically going to kind of like lock eyes with you and with like Wrangler kind of briefly, and there's a flash in his eyes of like a monstrous kind of like serpentine like pupils and stuff like that, very clearly inhuman. And in that moment, you get the sense that this guy really has, like, he's leaned into the whole, I can become a giant, terrifying monster at will thing, and he relishes in that fact. So I will need a willpower action from you on your turn, but, or like, as a defensive thing, but what is your active action going to be?
I'm going to run up and smack him.
Okay.
Just wallop him.
I mean, that's easy enough.
Ghost has no finesse right now because if she's not sure if the Chancellor has been captured or not, but she is sure that Leviathan has to be stopped for her to find out anything.
Okay. I think... Yeah, Wrangler is, and he's still got the knife, but he definitely has, like, he hesitates a little bit because, you know, the idea of, like, stabbing this little knife into a giant sea monster is one thing. The idea of stabbing a basically normal-looking human person on camera is decidedly different. So instead of using the knife, he is going to he actually with his offhand is going to take the bullwhip at his side, and he's going to, like, you know, basically try to entangle Leviathan with the bullwhip. So that's what he's going to do this turn.
Okay.
Which I feel like. Let me see how he does with that first. So Leviathan is going to try to get out of the way. That's a 9. Actually, he's not going to be able to get out of the way of that because Leviathan is not exactly, even in human form, Leviathan is not exactly dexterous. So that's going to be that. Okay, so yeah, the whip kind of, like, wraps around Leviathan's waist and kind of, like, traps one of his arms at his side as he's kind of struggling to stand up. Which is going to make it easier for you to hit him with your staff.
That's good.
So go ahead and give me the strength action for that, and then I will ask for the willpower actions.
I'm going to do this with the strength action.
Okay. You're getting a lot of cards that play into what you're trying to do. Ooh, that is...
10, 14, 19, with my staff, 20.
Okay. And we're going to say... Okay. So, you... Like, as he gets... entrapped by the whip and, like, you know, kind of, like, feels it tighten, like, bind him, bind his arm to his side. You know, he would have, like, raised it to, like, kind of ward off your attack, but he can't. And so you just solidly just clock him in the head. You know, there's a big capital letters, you know, Thok, or, you know, Thwack or something. Yeah, exactly. And he kind of, like, stumbles a little bit dazed, and I will need that willpower action from you now.
Willpower, I'm going to put this down, and that is willpower 8, 15.
Okay, 15. So I'm going to play this for our boy Wrangler. Okay. Okay. Wrangler is... Wrangler has a very brief, like... Not a freak out moment, but one of those moments where it's like, what the hell was that? What is... Okay, you know what? And he kind of pulls himself under control as he remembers he's on camera and everything like that. Yeah, so you actually lay Leviathan out. You sort of just, like, force of will, like, barrel through his attempt to like, instill you with fear, and you know,
Even the previous times.
Yeah, exactly. You just blindly, like, kind of swing, and you lay him out. He is unconscious for the moment. Go ahead and draw your cards back.
Oh, God.
Uh-oh.
Another one.
Ooh. Oh, it's a positive card.
Okay, so I draw back and I get a 2.
I
I
mean,
used all the good ones already.
could be worse.
Uh,
You know what? I am going to say that the rescue event is going to eat up the last turn before your rescue arrives. Blockade, you hear the sound of helicopter rotors and a, kind of coming up over the trees, you see a small, like, paramilitary aircraft, very sleek, like, kind of zooming towards the site of the fight, and over loudspeakers you hear some bellowing. This is Blockade Securities. Stand down. We'll take it from here.
I'm going to look at Wrangler and say, Dagger, now.
Okay.
I'll hold out my hand if he doesn't want to. She's very practical at the moment. She knows this guy's already dead. He's already dead. Stab him.
I'm gonna need you to give me a willpower action to convince him of that, because, again, he looks pretty real and solid and alive right at the moment.
I'm gonna do my Hail Mary.
Okay, all right.
I do not have cards to benefit me at the moment.
Now you can play the One of Doom as your edge card, so that'll give you a little bit of an increase, and then you can still do the Hail Mary.
Yeah. Let's do the edge, and then do the Hail Mary, and that's better than my cards were.
Okay, I am going to draw a card for the Doom card that you're playing. So that's a 7 plus your willpower of 8.
Mm-hmm.
Is 15. You don't have, like, persuasion or anything like that. You know what? I'm going to... Okay. The event that... like, the deciding factor is I drew a card to determine, because it was such a narrow thing. And I got Attraction of Attention is the event. And so I think, ultimately, if what you're saying is true, this is going to be... like, this is going to be so viral by within the next 20 minutes that he is actually going to take the knife. He kind of flips it so that he's holding the point first, and he throws it from, probably about 15 feet away. He doesn't have knives, but he does have flinging. So that is going to... So that's a 6 of agility. The card that I flip is a 4 of agility and a 4 of intellect, plus agility of 5. So that is 19. And this guy's unconscious. So yeah, the dagger tumbles end over end. The blade catches the light and kind of glints once before it embeds itself in Leviathan's chest, and there is an instant reaction of him, like, transforming into the sea serpent form, and, like, thrashing violently. I will need an agility. Go ahead and draw your card back.
Okay.
I'm going to need an agility action to avoid, or a phasing to avoid being caught in the throes of the coils of the serpent kind of lashing back and forth.
Yep. So that's 6 plus phasing of 10. That's 16 to phase and get out of there with phasing.
Okay. This isn't exactly like tension. It's like, it's not conscious. It's just thrashing. So yeah, you and Wrangler both are able to, like, Wrangler's whip, like, basically kind of tears apart as Leviathan turns into his human form, And Wrangler actually seems to start moving before the transformation happens, almost like he could sense what was about to happen. And so he's like just like a couple feet ahead of you in like kind of rolling back and kind of getting out of the way. And Leviathan thrashes violently for a moment, and then just poof. Like 1 second he's there, and the next it's gone.
Yep.
There are very large like smears of it. It almost looks like blood, but the color is wrong. It's too pale, and even the viscosity of it is wrong. Like it's too watery as well. But that's, even as you're kind of like looking at it, it starts to like evaporate. It's within 30 seconds, it's gone.
Yep. I'll say, let's go. With the blockade right there, it's time to leave. Grab the dagger. Let's go.
Okay. Yeah, they come barreling in overhead, and they, the thing slows to kind of a hover. And even as it's doing that, like some repelling ropes get tossed out either side, and a couple guys in armor like basically like swing out and start to descend. The dagger is nowhere to be found.
Oh, lovely. Okay.
So, but yeah, Wrangler is going to Wrangler, like as he's kind of running by. Oddly enough, the last card he had in his hand was unprotected valuables, so I think he's going to not be able to get one of his cameras, which is a big deal for him. But as like the two of you kind of like run off side by side, he grabs the whip that's kind of I was gonna say sheathed, but that's the wrong word. That hangs from like the small of his back, and he uses that and kind of like grabs like the other camera that's close by as you're running past it. And he grabs that and kind of like pulls it in and like tucks it into his pocket as he's running.
Okay.
Says, well, that was certainly dramatic. Not exactly what I expected, but I mean, the views on that are going to be out of this world.
I tell you, that not worth it. Her response is, the views aren't worth it.
Are you kidding me? That was live. He's like,
yeah.
I can already see the headlines.
Yep.
So yeah, the two of you, you head off through the bleachers, and I mean, you're familiar with the interior of the school, so you are very easily able to kind of like, especially because you can phase, like you grab onto Wrangler and kind of like phase through a wall and kind of lose the blockade soldiers that are following you very quickly and easily. So yeah, that is the escape.
Yeah.
What is Ghost's first order of business once she gets into civilian attire and is like assured of her being clear of the blockade soldiers?
My first order is to message her professor and say, hey, barely got out of there, blockade showed up. They may or may not have the heart, so you're gonna probably need to get that back.
You get a text response that's very brief that just says, heart shattered, only able to retrieve a few small fragments. Blockade has the rest.
Okay.
I'll see you in my office first thing Monday morning.
Yeah. Yeah. So she's going to then rest, just sleep on Sunday.
Okay. In between like naps and things like that, you get up to get some food or whatever the case may be. There are indeed lots of activity online about Wrangler and Ghost. Hashtag Ranghost. Yeah, probably. Is a trending hashtag. People talking about the footage. Being as it's the next day, of course, there are people who are trying to dissect it and trying to say that it's faked, and especially because of the clipping through the giant snake and all this stuff. There are reaction videos, and mainstream headline news obviously is running some of the footage because it's a big headline, like giant sea monster attacks baseball park in Portland, that kind of thing. Yeah. There's a fair amount of discourse about like, oh, these two vigilantes just murdered someone on camera, yada yada yada. It's more from like fringe news venues, but it's definitely the kind of thing that there are like some interviews that are being done with random people on the street and stuff like that, and saying like oh, how do you feel about having a vigilantes union in the city now? And they're like, I don't know. I mean, if they're gonna go around and just like if they feel like they're emboldened to just kill people whenever they're in a fight with them, I'm not sure how I feel about it. I was gonna vote for it, but now I'm not sure. There's a fair amount of that goes on. And Blockade, I will say, the Blockade CEO within those short 24 hours goes on like 4 different news channels and interviews about how like this is what he's been trying to say, that these people have no accountability, and they can take it upon themselves to do whatever they want whenever they want. They think themselves above the law, and he's really spinning this for like, you should be supporting Blockade as the defenders of Portland and not these heroes.
Yeah, I was afraid that would happen.
You are there are a number of people reaching out to go, like, oh, we're trying to reach out to Ghost for comment or for an interview or to get her take on things, and obviously nobody knows to contact you for that, but
no. Do other superheroes have social media accounts?
Yeah, there are a couple, like in so pretty much all of the cities that have a Vigilantes Union chapter, there is a joint social media account. Usually they have someone who does like their PR stuff, like social media management for them. But there are a few heroes who are very kind of social media savvy, and so they've got their own accounts, or they manage the team's accounts or whatever. So yeah, a lot of the ones that are like basically operating outside of the official channels, they don't, because it just draws unnecessary attention to themselves. But but yeah, there are a few. Wrangler's probably the most prominent of the non-union ones, anyways.
Yeah. So Ghost will put up a post through the the social media account she set up to comment with Wrangler.
Yes.
At the one point, and she will comment and say, "It's really hard to kill something that's already dead. That was already dead." That's all she'll say. That's like the one comment from her.
Is that a comment, or is it a video, or is it like an audio file? Is it a TikTok? What is it?
It's a reply to one of to one of Wrangler's posts about the thing. So
Okay.
like clips of the video or whatever somewhere where it shows where people are all commenting, did you kill that guy or how did that go or whatnot. She'll put a reply. So like if it's TikTok, it'll be a quick video reply. If it's
Okay.
that sort of thing. And if it's a video, she'll film it, at some random part of the city where she doesn't live.
Smart.
She's not foolish about, social media interactions. She knows all the safety things, especially being a trans athlete. It's not exactly a thing you want to broadcast.
Yeah, for sure. Okay. Yeah, they give me... So one thing I will say is that you have the writing skill.
Yes.
So if you wanted to kind of play this to your advantages, you could do an official comment, where you kind of type out like what little information you want to share, and you kind of put that up on the video, under your Real Ghost of Portland account,
Right.
or whatever you've decided to call it, and then you can use your willpower card to see how effective and how persuasive you are.
Yeah, I think that's probably what she would do.
Okay.
She wouldn't be a hot-headed reaction on it. She would take her time, type up something, and then very carefully read out the statement.
Okay.
And then, also put it in front of the camera or, do another, take a picture of the statement or whatever. So.
Okay. All right. Yeah, go ahead and give me that willpower action.
Willpower. Draw a card. God damn it.
Oh, okay. All right.
But let's see, willpower with writing, that's a 9 plus the 15. That's a 24.
Okay. Yeah. All right, yeah. So you type up your little response, or you write it out, and then you also type it up and post the picture. So that, you're basically holding up this comment or this response that's handwritten with you in the mask and everything like that, so that people can be like, okay, this comment actually is from Ghost.
Yep.
And how much detail are you including? Are you talking about like the Atlanteans? Are you talking about the hearts? Or are you just saying this was like a spirit?
Oh, knowing that ghosts and other things have been, showing up in other cities for years, she's going to explain that it was another of that line of things, the spirits, then it will, and yada, yada, yada. She's not going into the heart or the Atlanteans too much.
Okay. That works. So the vast majority of the city seems like kind of mollified by that. Like at least the people that are following along with it, like obviously that becomes viral in and of itself and becomes a whole big deal. The flip side, the second edge to that sword is that Brock Kentman of the Portland Portent kind of picks up on that comment and basically like posts a video of him like kind of sitting in his house, like just kind of talking to his camera, spinning this narrative of Ghost must be an actual ghost, and there's clearly some spiritual war like breaking out in Portland, and there's the forces of the underworld are very sensationalistic stuff, but it gets picked up. It becomes the prevalent predominant theory of Ghost's activities in Portland for at least the foreseeable future.
That's awesome. I like it. I like it.
Let's see here. I just got to make a quick little note.
I know there's a Dr. Spooky in a webcomic, but I feel like there's some like B-lister who's like an auxiliary member of one of the Vigilantes unions out there who's now on his way to town to figure out what's going on.
Like, I'm going to go figure out what's happening there, because that sounds... I don't know, that sounds fishy.
And I don't know if he's Dr. Spooky would be the right name, but that particular character drives around in a hearse and has an imp as a familiar. That's the kind of character I picture. Somebody in a hearse cruising around with like a ghost of some kind as a familiar.
as a sidekick, yeah.
Yeah. For those of you who want to know, you can find more about Dr. Spooky at a link in the bio.
I'm really imagining Brock Kentman as a discount J. Jonah Jameson.
Right?
Like he is the more... So say what you will about Jameson, but he actually cares about, getting information out to people. It's his version of things and whatnot. But, he believes in the narrative he's trying to push, for the most part. Brock is more of an opportunist. He wants anything that's going to draw attention to himself, kind of like Wrangler, but in a much less, I'm going to help people kind of way. So yeah, this will be a fun little...
That video, I'm picturing him doing the Jonathan Frakes Beyond Belief bit.
Yes. Come with me as I detail to you the real ghost wars of Portland. And that's actually what the title of the series is. It's the real ghost in parentheses wars of Portland. So kind of playing off the real ghost of Portland tag that Ghost is using.
Yeah.
So. Okay. Cool. I've written down a few notes, a few ideas for how that's going to affect the situation in Portland on an ongoing basis. So that'll be very entertaining to see how that goes. I feel like that is probably Ghost giving that giving that statement is probably like the second to last page, a few panels, maybe some reaction shots from people like posting and, commenting on it. And then the last page is going to be a sort of an aerial splash page looking at, Portland as a whole with kind of that superimposed like broadcast dialogue box from Brock Kentman spinning his theory about this underworld war that's occurring, and that's kind of like the end of the issue, or the end of the this little mini origins arc for Ghost.
It's the end of Ghost Phase 1, or however you want to say it nowadays. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Okay. Now, I forgot to do this with Amber. You get what is called in the game rules as a response point, basically an experience point. And with that point, you can spend that on your character sheet to increase one of your numbers, give yourself another skill, whatever the case may be. For the most part, everything is just as easy as saying, I want to put this point into this. You can give yourself another stunt for one of your powers. The only exceptions are removing a hindrance, increasing your edge, and removing a limit. Those are all a little bit trickier than just spending a point on them. You have to kind of... For the hindrance and the limit, you have to kind of work towards removing them during the narrative to kind of justify it.
Yeah.
With your edge, you actually have to spend a number of experience points equal to your current hand size in order to bump those numbers up. And they go up together. If you increase your edge by 1, your hand size also goes up by 1.
Okay.
So, edge means you can play more cards, like more of those low cards, you get more value out of those. Hand size means you've got more cards to play with, you can take a little bit more of a beating in a fight. So, it's worth it to build up for it, but if there's something else you want to improve in the meantime, that might be the way you want to go with it.
Sure. I think I'll think about it. What I want to do at the moment.
Okay.
Because I know in Arc 2 I'm gonna want to work on getting rid of the uncontrolled limit.